What's happening, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 Ford F150. This is the 302 version of the vehicle, which means it's an XLT trim level, cloth interior. But if you look, it's a little bit special. That's because it's the XLT Special Appearance Package. It looks really, really sharp, gives it a couple extras, like these beautiful, gorgeous rims that we're looking at here, so that black style rim instead. One other thing to note, this thing does have a 3.5 liter engine in it. Gives you 375 horsepower, 470 foot-pounds of torque, and depending on how you have it configured, maximum towing capacity on this 4x4 F-150 up to 12,500 pounds. This thing is a beast. Can take on the majority of RVs you're gonna throw at it, boats, you name it. Let's have a peek and see what this thing's all about. Alright, so starting off, let's take a quick peek at the key fob here. So the XLT does have a traditional key still, so all we're gonna do is just pop that open in order to see the actual key there. Push the button here in order to fold it back down into place. Now we've got our lock button, our unlock button, and then we've got the remote start as well as our horn and panic alarm button. So in order to use the remote start, all we're gonna do is we're gonna hit the lock button. Let's zoom in here. There we go. So we're gonna hit the lock button once and then this button here twice. So let's do that. There you go. As you can see, we're remote started now. In order to turn the remote start off, all we're gonna do is press the circle button once. Now the tailgate on this thing's pretty easy to unlock. All we're gonna do is grab from the back here and first off, make sure that the vehicle's unlocked. So you're gonna unlock the vehicle first, grab and drop down. Now I do recommend getting the tailgate step, especially if you're gonna spend any time in the back of this thing. In order to open up the tailgate step, if your vehicle comes equipped with it, there's a little button here. All we're gonna do is press the button. We're gonna slide this tailgate out from the step, and then literally just gonna follow the yellow. So we're gonna grab this, bring it up, and up. And as you can see, it's locked into place here, so all we have to do, infinitely easier to get in and out of the vehicle here. So I do recommend getting a tailgate step if you are getting an F-150. Again, only if you're gonna be using the box in the back here. In order to close it down, all we're gonna do, follow the instructions. So we've got 1, button press down, 2, down, in, and we're just gonna lift the step up, slide it back into place. It's that simple. And as you can see here in the back of the vehicle, there isn't a bed liner. You've got a couple different options. You've got a drop-in plastic liner or a spray-in bed liner. You can either get it done from the factory if you're choosing the spray-in liner, or you can do an aftermarket solution, something like Line-X, which also gives you a lifetime warranty. Now, a couple things to point out in the back here. So the vehicle does have a backup camera located here, and it does have the reverse sensing system as well too. So as we get closer to an obstacle, we will be able to sense it because there's going to be beeping inside the vehicle. You can turn the beeping off if that's a preference for you. It does have the trailer tow package as well here. So you've got the hitch receiver, so all you need is the ball joint itself in order to be able to start towing things. Now, towing capacity is going to vary widely on the F-150s. The 3.5 liter engine, which is the one that we're looking at, if it's got 20-inch tires, 4x4 in the SuperCrew, we're looking at a 12,500 pound towing capacity. Oh, bikes, love it. So you're up to 12,500 pound towing capacity in the 5.5 foot box. If you bump that up to the 6.5 foot, you're looking at 12,700 pounds instead. So ultimately, the choice of what engine to get is going to be factored off of what you need the vehicle to do. Take a look at the description below. It's going to list what engine has what capabilities. Filling up on gas on this thing, so we are looking on the driver's side, popping that open. So we are a capless fuel system here. All you do, slide that in and you're set to go in order to be able to fill this thing up. All right, now this is the SuperCrew version of the vehicle, which does give us full 4 doors. If you need the space, I'd say use it. If you've got kids, you will need the SuperCrew, especially if they're rear facing, as the Super Cab, which is the 2 full doors and the 2 half doors, won't have the spacing that this thing has. Hopping inside the vehicle, as you can see, there is a ton of room back here. So pretty straightforward, guys. Like, I am 6 feet tall. I've got a couple inches of headspace in the back here as well. So not a ton, but again, unless you drive around with people that are 6'5", 7 feet tall, they won't have an issue getting into the back here. Now there is a ton of space in the back of the vehicle, and we can even fold the seats up if we want to. All we're gonna do is pull on the tab in the back here, and lift up, and then as you can see, we've got even more space to do all sorts of fun activities. Let's take a peek at a couple other things. So off on the console in the back here, as you can see, we've got a cigarette lighter adapter. We've got 2 USB outlets, and then we've also got a traditional inverter here. So we can use a traditional wall outlet inside of the back of the vehicle. Outside of that, a couple other things to point out. There are a couple pouches on the driver and passenger seats if you do need to throw in some documents, things like that in the back. Cranking this lever down is going to get that seat folded back down again. Pretty straightforward. Looking under the side of the F-150 here, as you can see, we do have a keypad. Now the keypad, there is a 5-digit factory code which will let you unlock the vehicle without having the key fob on you. You can also manually program your own codes if you'd like to. And let's hop inside the vehicle here, looking at the driver's side door. As you can see, very straightforward. We've got our window adjusting buttons. This is, for our side view mirrors, I should say. So whatever one's highlighted is going to be the one that you're working on. So left-hand side obviously is going to be for the driver's side. Right-hand side is going to be for that passenger side. And then we use this directional pad in order to be able to adjust the mirror. Down here, this is going to kill the window power, so people that are in the back won't be able to roll down the window. So if you've got pets that like to play around or kids, etc., you can lock those windows so they can't open them up. From here, we've got our windows down, driver, passenger side, and then we've got our traditional unlock and our lock buttons. Now, in the 302 version of the F-150, the driver and passenger seats are both power adjustable, so 10-way power, and they're heated. In order to adjust the driver or passenger seat, it's literally going to be just using these knobs here. So this first one here, if you push it forward, it's literally going to bring the seat forward. Backwards is going to bring it backwards. We can push it down to lower the seat if you're a bit taller, or if you need to get a little bit closer, we can lift it up, and that's going to bring the seat up and higher. Using this one here is going to control the backrest, so we can move it back and forward as necessary. And then the last one here is going to be for our power lumbar support, so a little bit of extra support for our lower back. Alright, so a couple things to point out along the left-hand side of the steering wheel here. First one is going to be for our fog lights. So if you want those fog lights on, all we're going to do is press the button here that's going to turn them on. The button underneath is going to be for the lighting that's in the box of the trunk, so LED lighting, which is really, really cool, especially for late night work. Next up, we've got our light selector switch. There's only 2 settings that you need to be concerned about. All the way to the left, which is going to keep the lamps off, or all the way to the right. That's going to be your auto lamps, which means it's automatically going to adjust to the daytime or the nighttime lamps as necessary. You don't need to worry about doing anything yourself. So I do recommend keeping it on the auto lamp setting. A little bit further to the right here, we've got our dimmer switches, so a plus or minus button, which is going to adjust the brightness of the screen on the instrument cluster, as well as on the Sync 3 screen off to the right-hand side here. Looking down here, we've got our parking brake. And then last up is going to be our power adjustable pedals. So that's one of the cool things about the 302 F-150 is that it does give you the ability to adjust those pedals to bring them a little bit closer if you're a little bit vertically challenged. And then lastly is going to be adjusting the steering wheel. So in order to adjust the steering wheel on this thing, it is a manual adjust when we're in the XLT. So just by our left knee here, as you can see, there's a little lever. We're just going to crank that lever down. We're going to adjust the steering wheel so it is telescopic. We can move it in or out. Once you've got that perfect position, you're just going to take that switch, lift it back up, lock it back into place. Super simple to do. Alright, so inside the vehicle here, a couple things to point out. Firstly, if we look at the top here, we've got the first button here is going to be for our traction control. So we can turn traction control on or off from here. Next up is going to be our 4-way blinkers. So our hazard lights, we can just press that button there in order to turn it on. One more to turn it off. Next one here is going to be the auto engine start stop. Now this one by default is going to be on every time you restart the vehicle. That's the one that's going to kill the power to the engine when we're stopped at a light. All right. Now if you're not a fan of that, we can turn it off on a case-by-case basis, but every time you turn the car off and back on, you will have to press this button again. Moving down now into the Sync 3 screen. So a couple things to point out. If the vehicle has built-in navigation, we're going to see the navigation button here. If we don't have built-in nav, the screen's going to look the exact same, with the exception that nav button's not going to be here. They'll just be those other buttons instead. From here, we've got our maps. We've got the station that we're currently tuned to. We've got the ability to add a phone. If our phone is already connected, that's going to look very, very different. So jumping into audio first, couple things I should say. First up is going to be our entertainment sources. So from here, we can look between AM, FM, Sirius, Bluetooth, our phone, any connected MP3 players, etc. We can adjust and we can choose which one we want to listen to from here. Moving back, we've got the ability to direct tune, so we can direct tune to a station if we want to do that. Oh, we're in Sirius XM, so that's not going to work as well as I'd hope. Let's switch to FM for a second here. And direct tune, let's direct tune to 94.9, local station, great stuff. And there we go. So now as you can see, we've direct tuned to that station here. In order to set up a preset, all we're gonna do is change to the station that we wanna be at, and we're just gonna press and hold one of the set numbers here. Then as you can see, we've now programmed that preset in. So it's really, really straightforward here. At the bottom of the screen here, we've got the ability now to be able to add a phone. So in order to add a phone, all we're going to do is literally that, just to add phone.
Search for your vehicle on your device and select it once it is found.
Next up, you're going to make sure that your Bluetooth is turned on in the vehicle here. And here we go. So the Ford F150 has come up, so we're just going to go connect.
The pin displayed on sync matches the pin displayed on your device.
That's right. So as you can see, 909. So we've got that pairing request complete. So we're going to say pair and yes.
For your safety, please stay alert to changing road conditions and use Sync's voice-activated features while your vehicle is in motion.
There we go. All right, so she's done talking. So a couple of things: allow contacts and favorites via sync. Yes, we do want our contacts allowed, because if you want to use the steering wheel to be able to make phone calls, you need to have your contacts synced. So we're going to say allow. 911 assist is only going to work whenever your phone, I should say, is connected to the vehicle. So we're going to turn that one on here, and then automatically download our contacts as well. So always make sure that you hit OK there. And finish, and then as you can see, so we've got my phone connected, so we can look at my call list, contacts, some phone settings, etc. And I'm just going to jump back to the home screen for a second here. So now that my phone's connected, as you can see, we can see what the current signal is, how much battery power I have left, and we can go into some settings. So it's really, really cool here. In order to be able to remove, there we go. It's always going to happen, especially when you first turn the vehicle on. In order to be able to remove a phone. So before I do that though, we're going to look at one thing, which is going to be mobile apps. So mobile apps, the vehicle does have the ability to project certain apps onto the center console screen here. So some of them are going to be things like the Waze app, as well as LiveX Live, Spotify, things like that. So that's going to give you the ability to be able to do that here. In order to remove a phone from the vehicle, all we're going to do is go into the phone settings here. So phone, we can view devices, and you're just going to click on your phone here, and then you can either disconnect from it or you can remove it completely. So we're just going to remove the phone. And now if we jump back into our home screen here, as you can see, the phone is now disconnected. So really, really straightforward process there. Moving into our navigation now. So if your phone doesn't have navigation, you can skip a couple minutes ahead. Outside of that, let's take a peek. So in order to use navigation, we're going to start off just by hitting search, and you're going to type in the address that you want to navigate to. So you're going to start typing, pause in between every letter as well, because it will, as you can see, update the address here. You're going to select your address, and now you can either save it as a favorite, or you can just start in order to be able to navigate to it.
Obey traffic laws, be alert, and use voice commands while driving.
Perfect. There we go.
Please proceed to the highlighted route, and then the route guidance will start.
So nice and straightforward there. In order to be able to cancel the route that we've currently got going on, we're just going to hit this little X button at the top there and cancel the route out. Takes a second there. Moving back up to our controls here. Jumping into the menu, we've now got some different options for our screen view here. So full map or just highway exit info. Navigation settings is going to be the big one in the nav menu here. So as we get into the nav settings, we've got map preferences, which are going to be things like, the big one will be the point of interest icon. So that's going to be when gas stations and coffee shops and things like that show up. It's just a matter of personal preference there. Jumping back into our route preferences here, tons of options so we can choose between the fastest, shortest, or the most eco-friendly route. Dropping down a bit here so we can either avoid freeways, toll roads, ferries, or tunnels. Really a matter of your personal preference. So if you don't like driving on the 407, you can select that here so that the vehicle does not get you on the 407, so you're not looking at extra charges as you're driving. Back here, one more setting is going to be our navigation preferences now. And navigation preference is really going to be about the guidance prompts. So we've got the ability to select voice and tone, voice or tone only. So that's going to be as we come up to an upcoming turn, what happens? Do we get a voice from the computer and a tone? Do we get a voice or just a tone? Personal matter of preference. Play around with a couple to see which one you prefer. And let's X out and go back and back. And last one I'm going to point out here is going to be either our home or work address. So we can set a favorite up for our home and work. One of the cool things about doing that is that if you then use the voice activated steering wheel button in order to navigate, you can simply press the button and say navigate home, and it's automatically going to take that address that you've either added to your home or work address to navigate you there. Really, really cool feature. Moving into our app screen at the bottom here. So there are a few apps that you can use on the center console here. The Waze app is one of them, LiveX Live, Spotify, things like that. You'll be able to use those on the center console screen rather than having to go through your cell phone to use them. Moving into settings here. Settings, we've got our sound settings, which gives us the ability to change the treble, bass, mid-range, all that fun stuff. Moving back into our clock now. So as a default, we're going to be in our 12-hour time, so the AM, PM. If you prefer the military time instead, we're just going to select the 24-hour mode from here. Daylight savings time is automatically going to adjust the time an hour forwards or backwards, depending on the time of year. Auto time zone update is automatically going to update the time zone, depending on where you are. So if the vehicle is on the West Coast, the East Coast, if you're driving, as you're driving, if the time zone changes, it's automatically going to update the time for you based off of that. Next up is going to be our Bluetooth here. So we can turn Bluetooth off, or we can add a device. So a Bluetooth enabled MP3 player, we can get back into adding our cell phone there as well. And then same thing here. So we can add in our phones, we can manage devices from this section here. Next up is going to be radio. So we've got radio text and preset pages, so which is really cool. So if you're the type of person that has a ton of presets, you've got the ability to add up to 30. So there's 6 per page. We can have 5 pages, so up to 30 maximum presets. Jumping back here, so we've got our 911 assist. So 911 assist is tied into the cell phone, so your phone has to be connected in order for that to work. Next up into our navigation. So again, that's going to be the same settings that we saw under the navigation here. If you don't have factory navigation, this box will not be here. Next up are going to be our mobile apps. So mobile apps via USB. Now, one thing to point out is that the vehicle does have Sync 3, which gives it Android Auto and Apple CarPlay capabilities. Android Auto can be done over Bluetooth. Apple CarPlay, you do have to physically be connected using a USB port for the vehicle. Scrolling over now, we've got some general settings here. So general settings, we've got the language, so we can choose between English, Spanish, and French. We can choose between Celsius and Fahrenheit, kilometers or miles. And then all of these beeps that we're getting, if you don't like the beep, we can hit this button here, and then that'll get rid of the beeping here. So that's just a matter of personal preference here. System updates, I do recommend keeping system updates on. It's automatically going to update the firmware and the software in the vehicle. The only one that's not going to be updated is going to be the navigation. So when your vehicle's in for servicing, you can have the service techs do that for you, or you can manually download the apps via USB stick, download them out of the stick, plug it into the vehicle, and update it that way instead. If you ever sell the vehicle, or for whatever reason that's giving you any sort of weird issues, go into the master reset here and then reset it to the factory default settings. From here, we've got automatic updates and Wi-Fi. For automatic updates to work, you do have to be connected to Wi-Fi at home in order for that to happen. So connect through to Wi-Fi here in order to be able to turn that on. In order to be able to turn the automatic updates on, I should say. Next up is going to be our Ford Pass Connect. So the vehicle is equipped with an onboard modem. So if you're using either Bell service, you do need a data plan either using Bell or I believe it's Sprint in the US, but it does allow you to connect up to 10 devices to your vehicle to use it as a hotspot instead. So really, really cool. The Ford Pass Connect, when you download it to your cell phone, gives you a number of other options, like you can view current stats of the vehicle. You can remote start directly from your cell phone as well. Moving into our vehicle settings here, so we're just going to look. So some basic settings, so camera settings, door keypad code, etc. As I mentioned, you can change the keypad code from the outside of the vehicle, or you can do it here instead. So if you want to set up different codes, you can do that. You'd enter the 5-digit factory code first, and then from there you can enter in your own specific code. Jumping into the display now, so we've got a beautiful 8-inch display. If you're not a fan of looking at it, we can simply turn the display off here. Press again in order to turn it back on. Background, we can change the look of it, and then we've also got a few different modes. Auto is going to put you into the daytime or the nighttime mode, depending on the time of day. And if we go into our nighttime mode there, look at that, nice and beautiful blue. I personally, I keep this on all the time. I just love blue, so I love this look all the time, but it is a matter of personal preference. If you prefer it, you can let the vehicle decide when you should be in day or nighttime mode. And moving back, next up we've got our voice control. So 3 different options here. I want you to listen for a second. Tune to 97.7.
Tuning to FM 97.7.
Okay, so as you heard there, it did give us a confirmation letting us know that it was going to tune. So what advanced mode does, it essentially gets rid of a lot of those extra prompts. So listen now. Tune to 94.9. And there we go. So just to show you that it did actually tune, so it has tuned to that station there, but it doesn't give us all of those extra prompts and things like that. So I'm personally a bigger fan of doing that instead. Phone confirmation is whether or not we want to be confirmed when we're making a phone call. And the last one is going to be the command list. So the command list is going to be this list here. So if you don't want that to come up, all we're going to do is turn it off here. And when we press the voice command button on the steering wheel, that message is just not going to come up anymore. Moving back here, last one to point out is going to be our Valet Mode. So Valet Mode essentially locks the screen out when we enter a 4-digit PIN. So just to show you how that works here, so really, really cool. All we're going to do is select a 4-digit PIN, nice and hard, 0000. Please don't use 0000. Make it something a little bit more challenging, but please make sure that you also remember what the code is. And as you can see here, we're now completely locked out. So I can't do anything on the screen. Even if I start the vehicle or turn it off and then turn it back on again, I won't be able to actually access anything until I enter that 4-digit combination again, I should say. And that's going to be that Sync 3 screen in a nutshell. Let's adjust and move down a tiny little bit here. There we go. So a couple things to point out here. So we've got our volume rocker here, so we can turn the audio on or off. We can adjust the volume from here. We can manually tune here as well. So if you have a preference, as I said, you've got a few different ways you can tune. I personally just use my voice, easiest thing to do. You can manually tune, or a passenger can tune from here, or you can direct tune by entering the station in here. So really, really straightforward in order to do that. Moving down here, we can switch between different presets here. We can also change between stations, or if our phone's connected or an MP3 player, we can switch between songs. Pressing this button here, again, same thing, so it jumps us into that media setting. So if we go media here again, changes us out between the type of media. So whether it's Sirius XM, if we've got a Bluetooth-enabled player here attached to the vehicle, or a phone, we can switch between the media there. Moving down a tiny bit, there we go. So as you can see here, we've now got some options for our fan control. So we can turn it. Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's nice. Turn it up nice and high for AC. We've got the AC blowing here. We can turn the system on or off from here. Next up, we've got the ability to select where it's going to be blowing to. So we're blowing to the windshield, to our face, to our feet, and then this is the air circulation button. So with this button turned on, it's going to circulate air in the cabin. If it's off, it's going to pull air from outside of the vehicle. Now this is the 302 version, so we do have heated front seats here. We've got our rear window defroster, I should say, as well as our air conditioning. So we can turn that on or off from here. And then this one is going to let us choose the temperature inside the vehicle here. Next up, moving down here, as you can see, we've got a couple USB ports. We've got the ability to either just toss our phone here, which is kind of cool. We've got a couple different ways that we can just kind of toss our phone. And then from here, we do have our traditional cup holders. One other thing to point out on this side here, as you can see, popping this up, we've got our traditional cigarette lighter adapter, as well as a traditional wall outlet. So if you have just a regular wall outlet, you can plug it in here in order to charge things up right from the vehicle, which is kind of cool. All right, let's move up and over a tiny little bit. And there we are. Perfect. All right, now off to here. So this is a 4x4 vehicle. So by default, we want to stay in 2 high the majority of the time. If we're going off-roading or if it's deep snow conditions, etc., you're going to want to be in your 4 high. Or if you're towing a boat, backing it into water, that's when we're going to be using 4 low. Next up is going to be our trailer backup assist here. So the backup assist is actually kind of cool because traditionally we would counter steer the steering wheel the way that we want the vehicle to go, or the trailer to go. But by using this instead, this essentially takes over control of the steering wheel for you, and it's automatically going to counter steer just depending on the direction that you want to turn. Really, really cool feature. From here, as you can see, we've got the shifter knob here now. So because this is a special edition package, it's going to be the same in the sport package as well. It moves the shifter knob from here into the console here. So really, really cool. We've got a few different modes. So we've got our park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then our manual mode. So just off to the left-hand side of the stick here, You can just kind of make it out. Let me move you here for a second. There we go, and up. There we go. Perfect. So this right here, so we've got a little plus and minus button here. So we do have the ability to change the gears that we're in. So we are in a vehicle that does have 10 speeds. So we can adjust what gear we're in by pressing the plus or minus button here. Pretty straightforward there. One other button to point out, we've got this little button here, which is going to be our drive mode. So drive mode gives us normal, tow, snow wet, eco, or our sport mode. Okay, next up, looking at the steering wheel here. So a couple things to point out. Let's start on the bottom left-hand side here. This is going to be for our cruise control, so we can turn cruise control, I should say, on or off. So as you can see, we've got that set button that shows up there. Once you get to your ideal speed, all you're going to do is press set, and then you're going to use the plus or minus buttons in order to increase or decrease your speed 1 kilometer or 1 mile per hour at a time. You can cancel out cruise control here, or if you've had to brake, you can reset it to the speed that you were currently at by pressing the button here. Off to the right-hand side of the steering wheel here, we've got a couple buttons. At the bottom here, if we've got an incoming phone call, we would press this button to answer, this button to hang up. We've got our mute button here, and then our voice control button here. So this button is going to give us the ability to navigate places. We can change the radio station, make phone calls, just by pressing the button here. Our rocker's at the top here, so we've got our volume rocker. So we can increase, decrease the volume from here. We can mute by pressing the center button here. We can switch between radio stations, or if our phone's connected, we can switch between songs using the rockers here. Off to the left-hand side, that's going to give us the ability now to start adjusting this instrument cluster screen here. So let's move up a tiny little bit, and let's adjust you up a little bit higher here. There you go. Okay, now let's take a peek. So as we start to move up and down here, we can see tire pressure, speedometer, engine information, our current temperature, distance to empty, tons of options there. If we move back, we can look at our trip versus our fuel here. In order to reset our trip counter, all we're going to do is press and hold the OK button on the steering wheel, and that's going to reset us for there. We've got our trip 1 and 2, current fuel economy, fuel history, our compass, and then the auto start stop. So we can either adjust the auto start stop in a setting here, or we can turn it off using this button right here. Moving back here, if we do have well, the vehicle does have towing, so we can look at the current towing status, trailer options. So we can select our trailer, we can change our settings, we can add a trailer in. So that's really, really useful. So one of the big reasons why it's useful, especially if you've got mirrors that have the blind spot indicator system. So this specific one doesn't. However, it does have heated mirrors here. So you can see we're heated, and then we've got this little tiny mirror here as well. So if you had one with the blind spot system instead, this little mirror would go away, and then we would have a blind spot indicator letting us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the truck. Really, really cool. Adding in a trailer is very, very straightforward as well. Dropping down here, so for off-roading, we can see which wheel is doing which work. Power distribution, really, really cool feature there. And moving into our settings, so we've got our DTE calculation, rear parking aid, which is going to be that beeping that we get as we back up towards an obstacle. So if you have a preference, if you don't like that beeping, you can turn it off by pressing the OK button here. Moving into our pre-collision here, so pre-collision is essentially going to automatically brake for us here if the vehicle senses a collision. So we can turn the active braking off, but I do highly recommend keeping it on. Pre-collision assist, we can turn that on or off, and alert sensitivity is how sensitive it's going to be in order for the brakes to kick in. From here, looking at our advanced settings in our vehicle, we can change some things with the lighting. Auto high beam, I always recommend keeping that one on. Like, sure, we can lift the stick in towards us or push it away from us to turn the high beams on if we want to, but with auto high beam enabled, it's automatically going to turn the high beams on or off for us. It's going to adjust the brightness as necessary. So I do recommend keeping that one turned on. Auto lamp delay, so when the vehicle's locked, how long do the lamps stay on for? So 10, 20, or 120 seconds. Moving into our lock, so auto unlock and then remote unlock. So when you remote unlock, what happens? Is it the driver's door that gets unlocked, or is it all doors? Moving back from here, whenever there's an oil change done, we're just going to move to the screen here, press and hold OK. The dealership should do this for you whenever you get an oil change done. Moving back into our remote start, so we can turn the system off completely so that remote start doesn't work, but let's look at what happens when the remote start does work, when it turns on, I should say. So climate control, is it going to automatically let the vehicle determine what the cabin temperature should be, or is it going to be based off of your last settings? So the last time the vehicle was turned off, do we go based off of that? Matter of personal preference there. Seats, are the seats automatically going to turn on those heated seats as necessary? We can say on or off there. And then the duration of the remote start, does it stay on for 5, 10, or 15 minutes? Moving back into our wiper controls, so the vehicle, we can turn on a courtesy wipe if we want to. While we're on the wipers here, so we've got our left stick here in order to be able to work the windshield wipers. In order to get the fluid here, there's a button just on the tip. We're just going to press and hold that one here. As you can see there, in order to be able to turn that windshield wiper fluid on, and then rotating the knob here is going to let us select the intensity and how fast that windshield wiper goes. Moving back here, so that's going to be the basics in the advanced settings here. My Key, so the My Key is kind of neat here. So we've got 2 key fobs that are going to come with the vehicle. My Key essentially allows you to set up unique things specifically for a key. So let's say if you're lending your vehicle out, you can have it so that there's a maximum speed, let's say of 110 kilometers, so that people aren't excessively speeding in your vehicle. Really, really useful feature there. Moving back here, we've now got our display set up, so we can change the measurement units between liters per 100, miles in gallons, kilometers per liter. Temperature, again, Celsius versus Fahrenheit. Tire pressure, we've got some options there, as well as changing our language. So really, really straightforward there. That's going to be the basics of the settings here. And then display mode, so again, it's all a matter of personal preference. I do recommend playing around there because you may find something that's a little bit nicer for you. Now, a couple things to point out in the top here. So if we take a peek, so a few buttons here. So this one is going to be for our left-hand cabin light. So for the driver's side, we've got our passenger side on the right here. We've got all lights on front and back. And then this button is going to determine whether or not the lights come on when the doors open. So if we press that button, that means that when the doors are open, the lights won't come on. One more time in order to make sure that they do. Now, if your vehicle is equipped with a twin panel moonroof, you're going to have these buttons here and here. If it's not, these buttons are essentially going to go away. But if we take a peek here, so it is a twin panel moonroof, so if we press the shade button away, it's going to open it up halfway. Pressing the button again is going to open it up the rest of the way for us. And then from here, we've got 3 individual settings here as well. So this far one here is going to close the twin panel moonroof. This one right here is going to pop it up a little bit. And then this one right here is going to open it. And so if we push down again and then press the button here, so it's going to open it up the majority of the way. And then pressing it one more time is going to open it up the rest of the way. And then pressing the button once away is the same thing, going to close it up completely there for us. One other thing to point out, because this is the 302 version of the vehicle, or even if it's not the 302, if you get that rear window, so if we hop into the back there, so as you can see, we do have that rear window there. So pressing that one button there will allow us to open or close that rear sliding window. There we go. All right, so this thing does have the 3.5 liter turbo engine, which means it's going to be really, really powerful. Now, realistically, unless you're towing something, do you need the 3.5 liter engine? Absolutely not. So it really is just a matter of preference. If you're not towing anything, I do recommend taking a step down, looking at the 2.7 liter turbo instead. Or if you're not a fan of turbo, you can look at the 3 liter diesel or the 5 liter V8 engine. It's really a matter of personal preference there, but let's have a little bit of fun. Let's take this thing for a spin and see how it handles. Ooh. Same thing. Same thing as I experienced with the Mustang. Like, because this engine is so powerful, it's like you barely put your foot down and you're going. Like, it's really, really cool how fast this thing is. Now, not saying that the 2.7 liter engine isn't fast, because it's ultimately going to depend on a couple things, like how much weight do you have in the vehicle? Are you towing something? Because if you're not, when you put your foot down, yeah, it's gonna go. It's gonna be a little bit of fun too. And there's just something about driving an F-150, like being in a truck, you're obviously higher up off the road there, off the ground, I should say. You feel safer, and you kind of feel like a little bit of a boss at the same time as well. It's kind of cool. It's a nice feeling. Instantly, I'm just there, up to speed. It's a nice toasty warm day as well. Like wearing black today, yeah, definitely not a good choice. But I guess I could go Ron Burgundy and be drinking milk right now. They say with hot weather, milk is a bad choice. Oh, God. So ridiculous. So ridiculous. It feels good though. Like, the cloth seat is nice. Now, this is the special edition package of the vehicle, so it does look a little bit different. It's got some red trimmings on the steering wheel here, on the seats as well. So it is a little bit unique there, and that from that perspective. And like I said, the outside, those wheels, those tires look really, really sharp. But then again, like, I've always been a bigger fan of blacked out rims in comparison to those bright chrome rims. It's a matter of preference, because I know people who love the look of chrome. So it really is a matter of preference for you. Like, do you prefer chrome rims or do you prefer black rims? Aluminum, it's really your choice. There's a ton of options available. It's kind of cool. Okay, so I am stopped. Well, the auto engine start-stop did not kick in, which is nice because, like I said, it doesn't come on all the time. It's very sporadic when it does. The vehicle essentially chooses when it wants to go into that start-stop mode. And if you really, really despise it turning on, you can always turn it off if you really want to. Well, now we play the waiting game. It's going to be like 6 hours for this light to turn, but let's talk about some features on this thing as well, too. So what else haven't I covered off? Like the steering wheel, very straightforward. Adjusting the pedals, I really, really like that. I like that they're in the XLT version of the vehicle. Traditionally is something that you would really only find in the Lariat, which is kind of neat. The Lariat, and that's one of the big differences between looking at the XLT, which is the best-selling F-150, versus the Lariat. It's a difference between the cloth versus the leather seats. There obviously is going to be a lot more stuff on the outside of the vehicle that's going to be included when you look at the Lariat instead. But again, it really comes down to a matter of personal preference. Like, do you like cloth seats more? Do you like leather seats more? And then the other one is going to be, what's your budget? And that's a big thing to consider as well, too. What can you afford? Oh, this is nice though. I'm torn. See, I love sunroofs just because my vehicle being a little bit smaller, like, it's nicer having that sunroof here. But again, it's a matter of personal preference. If you don't want the sunroof, you can save yourself about $2 grand by not getting it. But again, it's really a matter of preference. Do you want that sunroof? Do you not? It's up to you. Well, brakes are nice and responsive, so that's a good thing. Oh, that's great. Whew. It is a little toasty today. But you know what, at the same time, I would rather have it a little bit warm than a little bit cold. Just a personal preference of mine. All right, here we go. F-150 on the highway. Yeah, that's right. Coming up with my own songs now as I drive. What else do you do? Oh yeah, I guess I can keep on reviewing the vehicle. I like to have fun. All right, here we go. Yeah, so much power in this thing. Woo! Up to highway speed. And I did, honestly, like, I didn't even have my foot all the way down. Like, it was probably about halfway, maybe 3/4, not even 3/4 of the way down. It's like, it's one of the nice things to know that if you need some extra power, the vehicle's got it. And realistically, like, whether it's the 2.7-liter turbo, the 3.5 turbo, like, even the 5-liter V8, like, there is a lot of pick up and go in these things. Like, no pun intended there, but if you need the power, it's there. It's kind of cool. It's such a different feeling though, like driving a truck compared to driving a car, like even an SUV. Like an SUV, yeah, sure, you're up off the road a bit, but it's not that much higher up because most SUVs today are crossovers, which means that they're essentially built on the frame of regular cars. They just have the body of an SUV put on top. Whereas a truck, like, there's no mistaking it. It's a truck, like it's built on its own independent frame. And it is nice. Oh, perfect. Yeah, like look at that difference. You can clearly see over top of this dude's car. And you feel safer. And it's actually pretty neat. Like a lot of friends that I've got, like looking at it, they're actually deciding to switch to F-150s rather than your traditional minivan. Like minivans and SUVs, like minivans especially, like they're being phased out. But that's because people are looking at different options and they're understanding that you don't have to get a minivan anymore. Like especially if you're looking at a truck, like something like the SuperCrew F-150, full 4 doors. As you saw there, a ton of space in the back. And one of the cool things is that it's got a huge trunk, I guess you could say. So if you're using it from a family perspective, you've got a ton of space in the back. If you throw a tonneau cover on there or a cap instead, you've got a ton of space in the back. Obviously, traditionally used as work vehicles instead. And it gives you the ability to have whatever box size you want, whether that's a 5.5 foot, 6.5 foot, or if you're in the Super Duties, you can get an 8-foot box with this cab size. So it really is a matter of personal preference. That's one of the things about the F-150s. It's a good thing, and then it's a crazy thing about them is that the nice thing is that there's literally thousands of different combinations. The bad thing is that there's literally thousands of different combinations. So it's ultimately going to depend on what do you want out of a truck? What's important for you? It's the same thing with any vehicle, really. Like, what are your must-haves? What are things that you absolutely need in a vehicle? What are things that you don't necessarily... Where are you going, fella? There's a truck in this lane, guy. Oh, well. Critiquing. I love that. It's so funny when you think about it. It's like, if you're... not an aggressive driver, but like realistically, how many times have you been on the road and stopped and said to yourself, huh, that guy up there is kind of a D-bag. But it's funny because on the opposite end of it, that driver is probably thinking the exact same thing about you as well too. Like, oh, that guy's a douche for driving so slow. And meanwhile, the guys in his car are sitting there saying, whoa, look at that punk kid driving so fast. Well, ironic. Whatever you want to call it. It's a good time. Very nice, very nice. So it's really, really neat, even for just like regular around town driving. Like the 3.5 liter engine, as I've said it a couple times, it's got a ton of guts to it. It's got a ton of power. It can tow literally a boatload, like no pun intended there. So it really is a matter of what you need. And you know what? I'm actually going to do a video on that next. What F-150 is going to be ideal for you when it comes to how much towing you need, what you're using, so payload, how much payload, what are you going to throw in the back of the vehicle? Like there's tons of different things. So the question then becomes, what do I need from a truck? So I think that's going to be a really, really cool video to shoot, because then I can kind of break down the different engines, what their capabilities are, and then what's recommended. Because it's funny, like you think there's tons of people that they come in wanting a truck and they're either overestimating or they're completely underestimating what they might need. And it does. It happens all the time. Like, oh, I'm towing 7,000 pounds. The 2.7 liter engine is going to be enough. No, it's rated to tow up to 7,900 pounds, but you don't really want to be coming that close. Like a general rule of thumb, you want to be at about 75% roughly of your max towing capacity. So on this thing here with a max of 12.5, 12.7 if you get the larger box size, like really you should only be 9,000, 10,000 pounds roughly in towing capacity. If you're doing short trips, you can get up to that 11, 12,000 pounds, but again, that's really going to depend on how far you're going. So, here we go. So the engine stop. So it did cut off way back there when we were stopped before I got on the highway, but it has turned off here again as well. Like I said, it happens sporadically. The vehicle chooses when it wants to turn that on or off. It's really a matter of when it wants to do it. So in this case, it has done it here, but I take my foot off the brake, or if I remove the steering wheel a bit, it'll automatically turn the engine right back on again. It's kind of neat. Okay, and let's move into... Oh, is this dude gonna let me go? Oh, no, I thought he was. He decided against it. This dude here. Beautiful. Thank you, good sir. Love it when people do that. They're like, no, I'll wait for you. It's nice. It's nice when people do that, because you don't get that often. Right, and let's set this bad boy up here. Oh yeah, like a glove. Beautiful. And here we... So this is the rear parking aid that you're hearing right now. So looking on the screen there, so we can turn it on or off permanently or temporarily. It's just a matter of personal preference there. But guys, that was my review. That was my take on the F-150, and this is the 302 version with the XLT Special Edition package. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a thing or two. If you have an F-150 already, I hope that I've maybe convinced you that an upgrade might be necessary, especially if you're in an older model. If you have any questions, please make sure you drop them below. Like and subscribe. The subscribe is huge. It helps this channel grow. Like the videos, comment if you have any questions. I do get back to people if they ask. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay safe out there and have a good one.